I discuss these developments in China's space program with Keith Cowing, editor of NASAWatch.com. And he first touched on what participants get out of experiences like that simulated space lab.
It's people skills. And so you really need to really focus on this, how you get along with people. It's not the engineering. That stuff's easy to figure out. So the more that you do this thing, the more that young people start to understand what it would be like to actually live and work in space, the more prepared we'll be.
So it's not actually about the eating or cultivating food or just existing in this structure. It's working with each other.
Yeah, it is. Surprisingly, it's the human factor, and it's one thing that's often overlooked. Like people say, oh, like you said, we've got this rocket, it'll take all this stuff to Mars, and it'll look pretty and cool and so forth, but, will the people get along at lunchtime? I mean, that's actually surprisingly more difficult, and many times when they select astronauts, they often ask, well, have you ever been to a remote research base or lived on a submarine or something like that? Because it's an indicator as whether you can work together with people in isolated spaces, because you can't just check out and go home.
You mentioned the young people. We're seeing this youth collaboration at the Sino-Russian micro-nano satellite student camp. A bunch of Chinese and Russian students who are the next generation. I want to get your thoughts on the collaboration and just growing this population of future astronauts.
From what I understand of this project, it's a bunch of students from 2 countries. And it could easily be 5 or 10 countries. But the trick is that the engineering is often the same, but the cultural approaches can be sometimes different. But this project is kind of cool. They're going to build 2 satellites, they're going to launch them in 2020, and they're going to talk to each other, and they're going to be operated by students. And once again, the sooner you can get people understanding how easy it is to build spacecraft and how to operate them, and how difficult it can be to convince people that young people can do things. Once you get all that together, you have the makings of a larger workforce, more people interested in space, and more people asking their governments to send things into space. So it feeds on itself.
And not only the youth aspect of it, but as you mentioned, you have a couple of different countries involved. I mean, they'll be working together not just on Earth, but above the Earth.
Well, as we've talked before, the one place where we always see all countries who maybe have problems on Earth seem to get along is in space. And there's something exciting about space that sort of dampens down some of the other stuff, that trade or whatever that people are arguing about. And sometimes some of the most enduring relationships between countries have started in space. As a matter of fact, there was a thaw in relations between the U.S. and Russia back in 1975 after the Apollo-Soyuz mission. So, good space exploration is also good foreign policy.
And these are older kids, they're college students. But talk to us about some of the youth, the younger programs. I mean, some countries have space camp or camps for even elementary school aged children to kind of cultivate the love.
Well, there's a lot of these. As a matter of fact, I used to be on the board of directors of the Challenger Center, which there's like 40 or 45 of these across the country. And this is where 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th graders come in to practice what it would be like to work, again, how to work together in a small space on a group task, in this case, missions to outer space. Then there's space camp. And then there's other educational activities where students are now building CubeSats that virtually anybody anywhere can build. And they're amazingly capable. As a matter of fact, I was just sitting waiting to come on, and I was looking at a picture that came back from a NASA CubeSat looking back at the Earth. It's an amazing way just to get students of all ages involved, and these satellites can do simple things, or they can do complex things.
And would you say interest among young people in space has grown, or has it declined over the years?
I think it's grown, and part of it is the fact that, I mean, when I was growing up in the 60s, go to the moon, that was sort of an impossible task, and yet, as I grew up, my generation saw this actually happen, but the rockets were big and expensive. Well, now, you literally can go buy a satellite online, you can buy the pieces, make it, go raise some money from a bake sale, and launch it into outer space. These kids know space is something that they can actually do. And so, when kids don't realize they can do something, they want to do it, and they want to do more of it.
Keith Cowing, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.